Here on the channel, we have talked a lot about the biggest houses in the world and the most expensive houses in the world, but an article caught my eye the other day that really intrigued me. It was called "The Most Remote House in the World Sits on This Island and Its Owner is a Mystery." After just a little bit of digging, I quickly learned that there have been a lot of eyes on this house lately, and there is a lot of mystery surrounding the place. In today's episode, we are going to get into all of the information that I could uncover on this place, including when it was built, why it's sitting on this remote island, and how it got there. At the end of the video, we'll take a look at some of the other most remote homes that are around the world, which are all very secluded and very cool. If you're new around here, my name is Scott. I'm a real estate developer out of Arizona. So here on the channel, we talk all things real estate. And if you're not new around here, welcome back. So first, let's talk about exactly where this island and this house are located. The island that the house sits on is called Elliðaey, which I might be pronouncing wrong, but it's a weird looking word, so I'm doing my best here. It's a tiny island south of Iceland with a cluster of about 15 other small islands and rocks sticking out of the sea. Elliðaey Island, though, is very small. There's only about 110 acres total of land here, and apparently there's basically no wildlife on the island other than a ton of birds called puffins and some sheep. If you've never heard of puffins before, they're these little black and white seabirds that feed by just diving into the water to catch fish. And as far as how the sheep are staying alive, they're basically just roaming around and grazing on all the grass. The only one thing that I want to call out here about the island itself is that it is definitely an island that's sitting all on its own, so it is pretty remote, but it's really only about 10 miles away from a larger island that has a population of about 4,000 people that has food, apartments, restaurants, and fuel. So if your house being just 10 miles away from civilization represents the most remote way that you can possibly live on this planet, that's pretty surprising. The story goes that this island originally had descendants of the Vikings that were inhabiting it about 300 years ago. Of course, the house that is the subject of today's video isn't that old. It was built back in 1953, but 300 years ago, I guess there were a few huts scattered around that families lived in, which are no longer there. It turns out that Elliðaey Island was a good place to raise cattle because of all of that grass, and it was a good place to hunt those puffin birds and go fishing. Long term though, this was obviously not a sustainable place to live and raise a family, first because of the cold, harsh conditions, plus the obvious factor of there not being a hospital or a grocery store or reliable heat, things like that. So the island and the house that was built back in the 50s has basically been deserted for decades now, although the house is still fully functional, and nowadays it's used as a lodge for hunters who are looking for those puffin birds. There's actually an Icelandic guy named Bjarni who posted a video on YouTube about his trip to the island back in 2017. He's not the most steady-handed with the camera, but it was super cool to see him take a boat out to Elliðaey Island with some friends, make the hike up to the house from the boat, walk around the island, and then cook up some steaks on the grill before heading back home. Bjarni's footage was decent, and it gave us all an idea of what it was like on the island and inside of this house. But fast forward to September of 2021, and we got a much better look of what was going on at Elliðaey because this kid, Ryan Trahan, flew out to Iceland to meet with that same guy Bjarni and stay the night at the loneliest house in the world. Ryan documents the entire journey, starting with the fact that you need to take a super sketchy inflatable boat from the mainland out to the island across really choppy waters. Then once you get to the island, you need to hop out of the boat and grab onto some ropes before pulling your way up a steep rocky wall. And after that, it's just a short walk to the house, which is just kind of plopped down in the middle of the grass. It was really cool getting Ryan's perspective because he shows in really good detail what the inside of this home looks like. The house is actually really clean and nice inside. It's got this tongue and groove wood. There's a bunch of art on the walls, and it's furnished pretty nice considering it's in the middle of nowhere. The people that Ryan stayed with explained to him how hard it was for their ancestors to build this place because every single piece of wood, nail, and all of that was carried up the same way that they accessed the island themselves that day by boat. Ryan goes on to show the sleeping quarters upstairs, which looks like it sleeps 8 people in total, which is a perfect setup for a group of people who want to go to the island for a short hunting trip. It was pretty awesome tapping into some real footage of this place because, to be honest, at first glance, when you see the photos of this online or in memes, you start to question if this house is even real or if it's just Photoshop. So reviewing all that footage, we know that this house is very real and habitable, but the reality is no one actually lives here full time. There have been rumors floating around online that the island and the house was owned by the singer Björk, and there was another rumor that said that the lodge belonged to an eccentric billionaire, but both of these claims have been debunked and are not true. The house is just an abandoned place owned by seemingly nobody that is maintained and kept up by just the handful of people who visit the island every year. For most locals and visitors of Iceland, it seems like it is almost impossible to get out to this island even if you want to. I found a company called Rib Safari who had a tour that used to take you out to Elliðaey for the day, but they have since stopped that offering due to there being such little interest. The house on Elliðaey Island is considered to be one of the most remote homes in the world, but there's a handful of others around the world that are pretty fun to look at. First, we've got this place called the Crystal Mill in Crystal, Colorado. This house was once a power plant built in the 1890s, but now is privately owned, so no visiting this one if you feel like it. Next, we've got this house of stone in Portugal. The description says that this one looks like it's straight out of the Flintstones, and they're right. I guess this stone house was built back in 1974. Bishop Rock is another one. The Guinness Book of World Records names this as the smallest island in the world with a building on top of it. This lighthouse was built back in 1847. I wouldn't really consider this one a home, but I guess you could sleep here for a night if you felt like it. We've got another one here. This one is at the top of a rock in a village called Elliðaey. This house is sitting about 13 stories in the sky, so I'm sure the views are pretty incredible. Technically, it's a church, and it has been there a long time. Hard telling exactly how they built this place, but it's been recently restored, which is cool, so hopefully it'll stay up there on that rock for another 100 years. This one is a cliffside temple called Tiger's Nest in Bhutan. This place is super cool looking. It was built way back in 1692, which is crazy impressive, but it has been renovated a few times since then. They say that this home is sitting at over 10,000 feet of elevation. The last one on our list here is in Supai, Arizona. This isn't just a single structure, it's actually a very small community of 208 people that you only can get to via a 15-mile hike or a helicopter ride. The village is sitting on about 2 acres of land, and it's not far from the famous Havasupai Falls, which are one of the more picturesque places in the world. There are lists and articles all over the internet showing the most isolated and remote places around the world, but a big thank you goes to the Matador Network on that article that we were just looking at for organizing everything in a really nice way. I personally don't mind living in a big city and having all of the modern creature comforts that a big city offers, but I'm not gonna lie, looking at all those photos today made me a little bit tempted to go off into the forest or somewhere secluded to just relax and unwind for a little bit. Let me know what you guys think about the most isolated home in the world, and if you would be brave enough to go visit by boat if you had the chance. And don't forget to click subscribe if you had fun with the video today, because I'm putting new videos out every week and they're all real estate themed like this one. But that's all I've got for you guys this time, so until next time, see ya.